The sound of my father's raised voice stopped me cold outside his office door. In all my 19 years, I'd never heard him yell like that. Not even when I totaled his car last summer. You had no right, Veronica. No right at all. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. The scholarship letter in my back pocket suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I'm protecting this family, Veronica shot back, her voice dripping with that fake concern she'd perfected over the years. Have you seen the cost of that program? It'll bankrupt us, Michael. And for what? So she can run off to chase some ridiculous dream. I'm Hazel, and this was the moment I realized my stepmother had been sabotaging my life for years. She earned that scholarship on her own merit, Dad said, his voice cracking. And you went behind our backs to try and get it revoked? Merit! Veronica laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Please, we both know she only got it because of that sob story about her dead mother. My fingers curled into fists. The acceptance letter crinkled. Don't you dare, Dad warned. Don't you dare bring Sarah into this. Why not? Everyone else does. Poor little Hazel lost her mother so young. It's all I ever hear about. But who's been here? Who's been raising her? Me. And this is how she repays me? By running off to that fancy art school across the country? I bit my lip until I tasted blood. 6 years of forced smiles, of yes, Veronica, and whatever you think is best, Veronica. 6 years of watching her slowly isolate my father, turn him against my dreams, piece by piece. The scholarship stays, Dad said firmly. And if I find out you've tried to interfere again? You'll what? Veronica's voice turned deadly quiet. Leave me. Go ahead. But remember who helped you rebuild your business after the recession. Remember whose connections saved this family from bankruptcy. You really want to throw all that away for her art school fantasy? The silence that followed felt like a knife in my chest. That's what I thought, Veronica continued. Now I have a lovely dinner planned. We'll discuss this like a proper family. I'm sure Hazel will understand once we explain the financial reality. My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Did you tell them about the scholarship yet? I typed back with shaking fingers. No. But V found out somehow. It's bad. Want me to come over? Before I could reply, footsteps approached the door. I scrambled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. Veronica emerged, perfectly composed as always. Her eyes widened in fake surprise. Hazel, darling, how long have you been home? Her smile never reached her eyes. It never did. Just got here, I lied, matching her fake warmth with my own. Is everything okay? I thought I heard voices. Oh, your father and I were just discussing your future. She reached out to touch my cheek. I forced myself not to flinch. Why don't you join us for dinner? We have so much to talk about. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of my father through the doorway. He sat at his desk, head in his hands, defeated. In that moment, something inside me hardened. 6 years of playing nice, of trying to keep the peace, of watching this woman slowly poison everything I loved. Actually, I said, stepping back from her reach, I have plans with Evelyn. School project, can't miss it. Family comes first, dear. Her fingers twitched just slightly. Cancel your plans. I met her gaze steadily. No, I said. I don't think I will. Something dark flashed across her face, just for a second, but I saw it. And I knew then that the war she'd been waging in secret was about to become very, very public. I turned and walked away, my mind already racing with plans. If Veronica wanted to play games, fine. But she was about to learn that some people play to win. Evelyn's basement had always been our sanctuary, but tonight it felt like a war room. I paced between the worn leather couch and the pool table, replaying the afternoon's confrontation while she watched me with growing concern. She actually tried to get your scholarship revoked. Evelyn's voice cracked with disbelief. That's next-level psycho, even for Veronica. I stopped pacing, fishing the crumpled acceptance letter from my pocket. Dad's signature is forged on this withdrawal request. Look at the date. 3 days ago. She must have gone through my room while I was at work. What are you going to do? The question hung in the air like smoke. Through the basement window, I caught glimpses of people walking past. Normal families heading home for normal dinners without wondering if their stepmother was plotting their downfall. Remember when she first moved in? I sank onto the couch. How she used to bring me those little art supplies. Watercolours, sketch pads, fancy pencils. Yeah, you were what, 13? 12! My laugh came out bitter. God, I actually thought she cared about my art. Turns out she was just marking her territory, making sure Dad saw her playing Mommy. My phone buzzed. Dad again. 4th missed call. You should talk to him, Evelyn said softly. And say what? Hey, Dad. Sorry your wife's a manipulative snake who's been sabotaging me since middle school. Maybe he needs to hear exactly that. Before I could respond, footsteps thundered down the basement stairs. Derek burst in, still wearing his work uniform from the garage. You okay? Got your text? He crossed to the couch, pulling me close. The familiar smell of motor oil and cologne steadied my nerves. I'm fine, just family drama. Bullshit. He pulled back, studying my face. You're shaking. Evelyn tossed him the forged withdrawal letter. His expression darkened as he read. This is illegal, he said finally. We should report her. To who? The evil stepmother police. The actual police. This is fraud. My phone buzzed again. This time a text from Veronica. Your father is very disappointed in your behavior. Come home so we can discuss this as a family. I showed them the message. Evelyn swore under her breath. Classic manipulation, she said, making it sound like your dad's the one who's upset when she's the one pulling strings. You can stay at my place, Derek offered. My roommate's gone for the week. The offer was tempting, but running would only prove Veronica right, that I was too immature, too unstable for the scholarship program. My phone chimed again. This time it was Sophie, Veronica's best friend. Hey, sweetie, heard about the scholarship situation. Let's grab coffee tomorrow, just us girls. That's weird, Evelyn said, reading over my shoulder. Since when does Sophie reach out to you directly? Since never. I forwarded the text to them both. Think Veronica put her up to it? Obviously, Derek scoffed. But maybe we can use that. Evelyn sat up straighter. What do you mean? Sophie knows all Veronica's secrets, right? And lately, I've noticed tension between them at the country club. I turned to face him. What kind of tension? The kind where Sophie drinks too much at ladies' brunch and starts venting about feeling used. Trust me, there's bad blood there. A plan started forming in my mind. So if someone were to encourage that tension... Exactly. Derek squeezed my hand. Fight fire with fire. It's risky, Evelyn warned. If Veronica figures out you're turning her friends against her, what's she gonna do? I stood up, suddenly energized. Try to ruin my life? Too late. My phone buzzed one final time. Dad, please come home, kiddo, we need to talk. I stared at the message, remembering his defeated posture in the office. How long had Veronica been manipulating him? How many other times had she sabotaged things behind our backs? I'm going home, I announced, but not to make peace. Want backup? Derek asked. I shook my head. I need to handle this part alone, but tomorrow. I looked at my friends, feeling a surge of gratitude for their loyalty. Tomorrow we start planning. Planning what? Evelyn asked. I thought about all the little cruelties, all the subtle manipulations over the years. How Veronica had slowly poisoned everything good in our family while maintaining her perfect stepmother facade. Planning how to make her mask slip, I said, in front of everyone. Sophie's coffee shop suggestion turned out to be the most expensive place in town. Of course it was. I watched her stir her third sugar packet into her latte, wondering how many of Veronica's secrets that perfectly glossed smile was hiding. I've known your stepmother for 15 years, Sophie said, tapping her spoon against the rim. She means well, even if her methods are unconventional. Unconventional? The word tasted like acid. Is that what we're calling fraud now? Sophie's smile flickered. The scholarship withdrawal was extreme, I'll admit. But she's just trying to protect you from what? Success? Independence? A group of women at the next table glanced over. Sophie lowered her voice. From making the same mistakes she did. Did you know she went to art school too? That stopped me cold. What? Before she met your father? She was quite talented. Sophie's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her cup. Then her first husband died, leaving her with nothing but student debt and unfinished paintings. My phone buzzed. Derek found something interesting in V's old social media. Call me. What happened to her art? I asked, buying time. Life happened. Bills. Reality. Sophie leaned forward. She doesn't want you struggling like she did. So instead of warning me, she forges documents and tries to sabotage my future. You don't understand how much she... You're right. I cut her off. I don't understand. Just like I don't understand why you're really here. Something shifted in Sophie's expression. A crack in her polished veneer. What do you mean? Veronica sent you to do damage control, but you're not telling me everything. She sat back, studying me with new interest. You're sharper than she gives you credit for, and you're not as loyal as she thinks you are. The words hung between us like smoke. Sophie's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her purse. Be careful, Hazel, she said quietly. Veronica doesn't handle betrayal well. Ask her sister. She doesn't have a sister. Sophie stood, dropping cash on the table. Exactly. My phone buzzed again as she walked away. This time it was Evelyn. Emergency. V's at the school board meeting right now. Ice shot through my veins. The scholarship committee meeting, the one where they finalized fall admissions. I ran out of the coffee shop, dialing Derek. He answered on the first ring. Found her old wedding announcement, he said without preamble. Before your dad. Get this, her first husband didn't die. He left her after she... Tell me later. I cut him off, already sprinting toward my car. She's at the school board. We need everything you found, now. On it. Meet you there. The drive to the administration building was a blur. I found Evelyn pacing outside, clutching a manila folder. She's telling them you cheated on your portfolio submission, she said, shoving the folder at me. But I got copies of all your original work submissions from Mrs. Chen. Every dated draft, every progress photo. My hands shook as I flipped through the evidence. 6 years of work. 6 years of dreams she was trying to destroy. How long has she been in there? 20 minutes. They're in the main conference room. I started toward the door, but Evelyn caught my arm. Wait, she said. There's more. Sophie called me right after you met. Said to check Veronica's history with the Sterling Art Institute. That's where she went to school. Where she taught. Until she was fired for selling student work as her own. The pieces clicked together like a terrible puzzle. Her obsession with my art supplies. The way she'd hover when I worked. All those suggestions about signing my pieces differently. She wasn't preparing to be a supportive stepmother, I whispered. She was marking her territory, making sure everyone knew she was the real artist in the family. Hazel. Evelyn's voice was urgent. If she convinces them you cheated. She won't. I pushed through the building's doors, clutching my evidence folder like a shield. Behind me, I heard Derek's car screech into the parking lot. Ahead, voices drifted from the conference room, including Veronica's, smooth as honey, and twice as toxic. I hate to bring this to your attention, but as someone who deeply values artistic integrity, I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. Time to show her what real artistic integrity looked like. Ready? Evelyn whispered beside me. I thought of Sophie's warning about betrayal, about Veronica's mysterious sister, about all the lives she'd poisoned before mine. Ready, I said, and pushed open the conference room door. The Sterling Art Institute's records arrived in a plain manila envelope, but the contents hit like a bomb. I spread the documents across Derek's kitchen table while Evelyn paced behind me. Terminated for ethical violations, I read aloud. Multiple incidents of unauthorized use of student work. Keep reading, Derek said, pointing to the next paragraph. Following investigation, Professor Veronica Mitchell agreed to resign quietly in exchange for... My voice caught. in exchange for destroying all evidence of student complaints. Evelyn stopped pacing. She didn't just steal their work, she erased their voices. My phone lit up with Dad's message. Coming home tonight. We need to talk about what happened at the school board. The school board meeting had been a disaster. Not because I'd failed to defend myself, but because Veronica had turned it into exactly what she wanted, a public spectacle of concern for her troubled stepdaughter. I should have seen it coming, I said, shuffling through more documents. The way she cried in front of the committee, talking about how worried she was about my unstable behavior and concerning patterns. She's good, Derek admitted. Making herself look like the victim while destroying you? That's next-level manipulation. Another document caught my eye. A newspaper clipping from 15 years ago. Local artist wins regional prize. The photo showed a younger Veronica beside a hauntingly familiar painting. That's your style, Evelyn whispered. The way you layer colours, the composition. No, I corrected her, hands shaking. That's my mother's style. The room went silent. I pulled up a photo on my phone, one of my mum's last paintings before she died. The similarities were undeniable. She didn't just want to stop me from going to art school, I said slowly. She wanted to erase every trace of my mother's influence. That's why she pushed me toward different techniques all these years. Derek's phone buzzed. Sophie wants to meet, says she has something we need to see. It's a trap, Evelyn warned. Maybe, I said, still staring at the painting. But we need more proof. You have proof, Evelyn gestured at the documents. Take this to your dad. Show him what she really is. I thought about Dad's message, about the way he looked at Veronica even now like she was his salvation after Mom died. The truth would destroy him. There's something else, Derek said quietly. Something Sophie mentioned about Veronica's sister. The one who supposedly doesn't exist. He pulled up an old social media post. Meet Christina Mitchell, Veronica's younger sister, also an artist. The photo showed two women, arms linked, smiling at a gallery opening. The caption read, "Sisters sharing their passion for art." What happened to her? Evelyn asked. That's the thing, Derek scrolled through more posts. She just disappears. No death notice, no explanation. Just gone, right after Veronica started teaching at Sterling. My phone buzzed again. Veronica this time. Your father's very disappointed. But we can fix this if you're willing to be honest about your issues. The pieces clicked together like a terrible puzzle. Christina's disappearance, the stolen artwork, the systematic destruction of anyone who threatened Veronica's artistic identity. She's not going to stop, I realized. The school board was just the beginning. She'll keep going until she's destroyed everything I am. So what do we do? Evelyn asked. I looked at the documents spread across the table, at my mother's artistic legacy that Veronica had tried to erase, at the evidence of lives she'd ruined before mine. We find Christina, I said, and we make Veronica face every person she's ever silenced. That's dangerous, Derek warned. If she did something to her own sister, then I need to know what I'm really dealing with. I started gathering the documents, because this isn't just about my future anymore. It's about making sure she never does this to anyone else. My phone lit up one last time. Sophie, meeting tonight. Come alone. There's something you need to know about Christina. I showed them the message. Don't go, they said in unison. But we all knew I would, because sometimes the only way to fight a monster is to walk straight into their lair. I just hoped I was ready for whatever truth waited there. Sophie's hands trembled as she slid the envelope across the diner table. Outside, rain pelted the windows, turning the parking lot lights into blurry halos. The late-night crowd had thinned to a few truckers and an elderly couple sharing pie. Christina's alive, Sophie said quietly, but Veronica made sure she'll never paint again. I stared at the envelope, afraid to touch it. What did she do? It's not what she did. It's what she threatened to do. Sophie glanced over her shoulder. Christina had evidence, proof that Veronica had been stealing student work for years, but she also had a young daughter. My phone buzzed. Derek, V just left your house, heading your way, get out now. I ignored it. Where is Christina now? Working at a hardware store in Oregon? Living under her married name? Sophie's mascara was smudged beneath her eyes. She gave up everything, her art, her identity, her whole life, to protect her daughter from Veronica's revenge. The envelope felt heavy as I picked it up. Inside were photos, Christina's gallery openings, her reviews in art magazines, her rising star suddenly snuffed out. Why are you showing me this? Because Veronica's doing it again. She's already contacted the dean at your art school, planted seeds about your instability. She's building a case just like she did with Christina. My phone lit up again. Evelyn this time. Your dad found the Sterling documents. He's furious. Call him. What exactly did she do to Christina's daughter? I asked. Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper. She arranged accidents, small ones at first, a fall at school, food poisoning, a bike crash. Nothing fatal, just enough to send a message. The elderly couple paid their bill and left. Rain drummed harder against the windows. And now she's targeting me. No, Sophie leaned forward. She's targeting everyone you love. Derek's garage. The health inspection wasn't random. Your friend Evelyn's college recommendation being rescinded. Not a clerical error. My hands clenched into fists. Why are you telling me this? You're her friend. I was Christina's friend first. Sophie's eyes hardened. And I've spent 15 years watching Veronica destroy people. It has to stop. The diner's bell chimed. Through the rain-streaked windows, I saw a familiar car pull into the lot. She's here, Sophie whispered. Remember what I said about Christina. There are worse things than giving up your dreams. I stood, shoving the envelope into my bag. I'm not Christina. No, Sophie's smile was sad. You're worse. You're Sarah's daughter. And that's why she'll never stop until she's erased every trace of your mother's talent from your work. The diner's door opened. I heard the click of expensive heels on linoleum. Hazel, darling. Veronica's voice dripped honey. What a surprise running into you here. I turned slowly. She stood there in her perfect clothes, perfect makeup, perfect smile. But now I saw the cracks, the slight tremor in her hand, the tightness around her eyes. Sophie and I were just discussing art, I said, specifically the Sterling Art Institute's faculty records. The smile flickered. Oh? How fascinating. Sophie, I didn't realize you and my stepdaughter had become so close. We were actually talking about Christina, I pressed. Your sister? The one who disappeared? Veronica's mask slipped for just a second, long enough to see something dark and hungry beneath. Sophie, dear, I think it's time you headed home. Sophie stood, gathering her purse. As she passed me, she whispered, choose carefully. Some victories cost more than defeat. I watched her hurry out into the rain, leaving me alone with the monster who'd married my father. Shall we discuss this at home? Veronica gestured to the door. Your father's quite concerned about your recent behavior. I thought about Christina, living in exile to protect her child, about my mother's artistic legacy, slowly being erased, about Derek's garage and Evelyn's future. No, I said quietly. I think we should discuss it right here. All of it. Unless you'd prefer the police handle the investigation into Christina's disappearance. Veronica's smile turned razor-sharp. Oh, sweetheart, you really are your mother's daughter. She slid into the booth across from me. Let's talk about what happens to people who threaten my family. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing away any chance of escape. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Dad's face as he stared at the photos spread before him. Christina's evidence, the Sterling Institute documents, everything I'd gathered to expose Veronica. She says you've been stalking her sister, he said quietly, that you've become obsessed. Dad, the restraining order is temporary. His voice cracked. But Hazel, they found those threatening emails on your laptop. My blood ran cold. What emails? To Christina, to Sophie. He pushed a printout across the table. To Veronica's old students. all sent from your account." The words blurred before my eyes. Emails I'd never written, threatening violence against everyone who'd wronged me, all perfectly crafted to make me sound unhinged. "She planted them," I whispered. "She must have accessed my computer when—" "Stop." Dad pressed his hands against his temples. "Just stop. The doctors think—" "Doctors?" The interview room door opened. Veronica glided in, followed by a man in a white coat. Her eyes were red-rimmed, perfectly portraying the concerned stepmother. "Dr. Reynolds specializes in acute psychiatric episodes," she said softly. "He's agreed to help us understand what's happening." The doctor sat down, opening a file. "Your father and stepmother have described some concerning behaviors, Hazel. Paranoid delusions, conspiracy theories, escalating aggression." "This isn't real," I laughed, the sound sharp and desperate. "Dad, you can't believe—" "We found your mother's paintings," Veronica interrupted. "The ones you've been copying, claiming they're your original work, adding dates to make it look like I stole from you when really—" My phone buzzed in my pocket. Derek. But before I could reach for it, Veronica continued. "And poor Sophie. Having to file a restraining order against you after you threatened her daughter." "What?" I turned to Dad. "That's not—" "The emails were quite graphic," the doctor said, "describing how you'd make her pay for betraying you." Another buzz. Evelyn this time. But the officer by the door stepped closer, watching my movements. "We just want to help." Veronica reached for my hand. I jerked away. "A short stay at the treatment center, some medication to stabilize your mood." "Dad," I pleaded, "look at me. You know me." He wouldn't meet my eyes. I thought I did. My phone buzzed a third time. The officer frowned. "Phone, please," he said. "Protocol for psychiatric holds." The world tilted sideways. This was her endgame. Not just destroying my future, but my credibility, my sanity, everything I could use against her. "Christina," I said desperately. "Call Christina, she'll tell you." "Your obsession with my sister has to stop." Veronica's voice hardened. "She's dead, Hazel. She died 15 years ago. I showed you the death certificate, but she hadn't. That was the mistake. The single thread that could unravel everything." "No," I said slowly. "You didn't." Something flickered in her eyes. Fear. My phone buzzed one final time. A text preview lit up the screen before the officer could grab it. "Found Christina. She's alive. Video proof. Holding for—" The phone went dark in the officer's hand. But I'd seen enough. Veronica had too, judging by the way her perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms. "I think," the doctor said, "given the severity of the delusions, immediate intervention would be best." Two orderlies appeared in the doorway. Dad stood, finally looking at me with tears in his eyes. "It's just for a few days," he said, "until you're thinking clearly again." I looked at Veronica, at her mask of concern hiding the triumph beneath. She'd orchestrated everything perfectly. The evidence against her would be dismissed as the ravings of a mentally ill teenager. My father would sign whatever papers she put in front of him, and I'd disappear into a system designed to make people doubt their own reality. Just like Christina had disappeared, just like all the others who'd threatened Veronica's carefully constructed world. The orderlies stepped forward with a wheelchair. "Standard protocol," they said, "for my own safety." But as they reached for me, I remembered Sophie's words. Some victories cost more than defeat. I had to choose. Fight now and prove Veronica right about my instability, or submit and pray Derek's message meant what I thought it did. "Okay," I whispered, sinking into the wheelchair. "You win." Veronica's smile was radiant with false compassion. But she didn't see me slip the police interview room recording device into my sock, the one that had captured every word of her careful manipulation. Sometimes surrender is just another way to fight. The treatment center's visiting rooms smelled like artificial lemons and despair. 3 days of observation had taught me the camera's blind spots, the staff's rotation schedule, and exactly how long I had before someone noticed the recording device missing from my sock. Christina sat across from me, her hands trembling around her paper coffee cup. She looked nothing like the vibrant artist in those old photos. Her hair was grey now, her eyes haunted. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "If Veronica finds out, she already knows." I slid my phone across the table, showing her the security footage Derek had captured. "You've been watching me for weeks, haven't you? Ever since Sophie reached out?" She nodded, tears welling. "I had to make sure you weren't like her, that helping you wouldn't put my daughter at risk again." The door opened. Veronica swept in, perfectly coiffed even at this early hour. Her smile froze when she saw Christina. "Well," she said softly, "the prodigal sister returns." "Hello, Veronica. Here to fuel more of Hazel's delusions?" Veronica sat beside me, maternal concern radiating from every pore. "The doctors say she's been making excellent progress. We wouldn't want to trigger another episode." I pressed play on the hidden recorder. Veronica's own voice filled the room. "Your obsession with my sister has to stop. She's dead, Hazel. She died 15 years ago." Christina's hands stopped shaking. "I'm very much alive, sister dear. And I brought proof of everything you did, every painting you stole, every student you threatened, every accident that befell my daughter until I agreed to disappear." "Careful," Veronica's voice turned silky. "False accusations can be so damaging to one's credibility. Just ask Hazel about her recent psychiatric evaluation." "That's why I'm not the one making the accusations." The door opened again. Dad walked in, followed by Detective Martinez and Sophie. My father's face was ashen as he held up a USB drive. "The emails," he said. "The ones you claimed Hazel sent. The IP address traces back to our home computer, during hours when Hazel was documented at work." "Michael, don't," his voice cracked. "Just don't." Detective Martinez stepped forward. "We have a warrant to search your devices, Mrs. Mitchell, and statements from multiple former Sterling Institute students." Veronica's mask cracked, just for a second. Then she laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You ungrateful little snake," she hissed at me. "I gave you everything, a mother's love, guidance, protection." "You gave me chains," I said quietly. "Just like you gave Christina. Like you gave all of them." "I made them better artists." "You stole their work," Christina's voice hardened. "Their dreams, their futures. I improved them. Added my expertise, my vision." "Added," Dad interrupted. "Or stole, like you stole my daughter's college fund. The money I thought was going to her tuition." Veronica stood backing toward the door, but Sophie blocked her path. "It's over," Sophie said. "No more manipulation, no more threats. You're all conspiring against me." Veronica's perfectly manicured hands clawed at her throat. "I won't let you destroy everything I've built. I won't—" She lunged for my phone, probably hoping to destroy the evidence, but her designer heel caught on the industrial carpet. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall, right beside my latest painting, the one I'd done in my mother's style, the one the doctors had allowed as art therapy. Veronica stared at it, something breaking in her expression. "You'll never be her," she whispered. "You'll never be Sarah. No matter how perfectly you copy her technique." "I'm not trying to be her," I said. "I'm being myself. That's what terrifies you, isn't it? That I might succeed where you failed?" The detective stepped forward with handcuffs. Veronica didn't resist, her eyes fixed on the painting. "You think this is victory?" she asked softly. "You think exposing me will heal what's broken inside you?" "No," I stood, gathering my evidence. "But it will stop you from breaking anyone else." As they led her away, I caught Christina's eye. She nodded once, understanding passing between us. Some victories don't feel like winning. Some battles leave scars even after justice is served. But watching Veronica's perfect facade finally shatter completely, that felt like freedom. Dad wrapped his arm around my shoulders as we walked out, leaving the artificial lemon smell and the ghost of Veronica's control behind us. Sometimes the greatest act of revenge is simply refusing to become what your monster wanted you to be. The gallery lights cast soft shadows across my mother's paintings. The real ones this time, rescued from Veronica's storage unit, along with dozens of other stolen works. Christina stood beside me, both of us reflected in the glass protecting Summer Storm, Mom's last completed piece. She never could capture light quite like Sarah did, Christina said quietly. That's what drove her mad, you know. Not just the stealing, but the knowing. That she'd never be as genuine as the artists she destroyed. The exhibition, Reclaimed Voices, the Sterling Institute Recovery Project, had drawn hundreds. Former students, art critics, collectors, all here to reclaim what Veronica had stolen, to restore names to unsigned works, to heal old wounds. Dad appeared beside us, his tie slightly crooked. The detective wants to know if you'll testify at the sentencing hearing. I watched a young artist across the room discover her lost portfolio, tears streaming down her face as she traced her signature under Veronica's painted-over name. No, let the others tell their stories. I have something different in mind. Sophie approached, carrying a newspaper. The headline read, "Former art professor pleads guilty to fraud, theft of student works." "She's asking to see you," Sophie said. "Claims she has something to say before they transfer her." She always has something to say. I turned away from Mom's painting. But I have work to do. That work waited in my studio. Not the basement room where Veronica had tried to shape me in her image, but a sun-filled space overlooking the city. My easel held a half-finished piece, nothing like Mom's style or Veronica's stolen techniques. Something entirely new. Derek found me there later, as sunset painted the windows gold. The exhibition's a success. They're already talking about touring it nationally. Good. I added another layer of paint, watching the colours blend. They deserve to have their work seen. Their real work. Under their real names. "And what about your work?" He gestured to the canvas. "This is different from anything you've done before." "Because it's finally mine." I stepped back, studying the emerging image. Not what Mum would have painted. Not what Veronica tried to force me to be. Just me. Evelyn burst in, waving her phone. "You need to see this now." The screen showed security footage from the county jail. Veronica sat in her cell, methodically tearing pages from a sketchbook. Each sheet contained perfect copies of other artists' works, as if she couldn't create anything else even now. "She's still doing it," Evelyn whispered, "still trying to steal other people's light." "No." I set down my brush. "She's showing us who she always was. A reflection without a source. A mirror with nothing of her own to show." Dad called that evening, his voice tired but clear. "The divorce papers are filed, and I found something you should see." In his study, he opened Mom's old journal. A letter fell out, dated just before she died. "To my daughter, the artist who will paint her own sky." My hands shook as I read her words. "Don't let anyone tell you which colours to use or which stories to tell. Your art, like your heart, belongs only to you." I thought of Veronica in her cell, endlessly copying others' work. Of Christina, finally free to paint again. Of all the artists reclaiming their stolen voices. "I'm not going to testify," I told Dad, "but I am going to paint her portrait. One last piece showing exactly who she is." "Are you sure that's wise?" I looked at my latest work, at the unique style emerging from the canvas. She tried to make me choose between being Mom and being her. But there was always a third option, being myself. The portrait would show Veronica surrounded by mirrors, each reflecting someone else's art, her own face blank and empty at the centre. A warning, perhaps. Or maybe just the truth she never could face. "Sometimes," Christina had said at the gallery, "the best revenge is simply creating something your monster could never copy." I picked up my brush again as night fell, ready to paint my own sky. Behind me, Mom's journal lay open to her final words. "The greatest masterpiece you'll ever create is the artist you become." Veronica had tried to steal that future, but in the end, she'd only helped me find it.